By the end of this video, you will understand why scientists are calling this the strangest predator conflict happening anywhere on Earth right now, and you will never look at a Florida swamp the same way again. Somewhere beneath the still, dark water of the Everglades, an ancient killer that has ruled this land for over 150 million years is facing an enemy it never evolved to fight. This is not a war from a distant continent, and it is not a story from the past. It is happening right now, in the swamps of South Florida, between two of the most efficient killing machines nature has ever produced, and one of them does not even belong there. What you are about to learn about this hidden war will change the way you think about invasive species, about the balance of nature, and about how easily an entire ecosystem can be pushed to the edge of collapse by a single mistake made decades ago. The American alligator has owned the Everglades since long before humans existed. It survived the extinction of the dinosaurs. It survived ice ages, hurricanes, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations. An adult male can reach over 13 feet in length and weigh more than 1,000 pounds, and yet despite that size, it can vanish beneath the surface of the water without leaving a ripple. Its eyes and nostrils sit perfectly on top of its skull, allowing it to breathe and watch while the rest of its enormous body remains completely hidden below the surface. This is not an accident of evolution. It is one of the most refined ambush designs in the animal kingdom, built and perfected over tens of millions of years for a single purpose: to make sure that whatever crosses its path never sees the attack coming. When an alligator finally strikes, the result is almost impossible to survive. Its bite force has been measured at more than 2,000 pounds per square inch, one of the strongest bites ever recorded in a living animal, strong enough to crush bone instantly and cut through the shell of a turtle as if it were paper. Once the jaws close, the alligator does not simply hold on, it begins what biologists call the death roll, spinning its entire body violently underwater to disorient its prey and tear away flesh with mechanical efficiency. For over a century, nothing in this ecosystem has been able to challenge that level of dominance. The alligator was, and in many ways still is, the undisputed ruler of the Everglades. The origin of its rival can be traced back to a single night in August of 1992, when Hurricane Andrew tore through South Florida with catastrophic force. Among the buildings destroyed that night was a private reptile breeding facility near Homestead, just on the edge of the Everglades, where large numbers of Burmese pythons were being raised for the exotic pet trade. When the storm shattered the enclosures, an unknown number of pythons escaped directly into the surrounding wetlands, and unlike a single released pet, this was an entire breeding population entering the ecosystem at once, already capable of reproducing. Combined with decades of additional pets being released or escaping on their own, this single storm is now considered by many researchers to be the founding event of one of the most destructive reptile invasions in modern history. The Burmese python is one of the largest snake species on the entire planet. Confirmed specimens captured in the Everglades have exceeded 18 feet in length and 200 pounds in weight, and researchers believe even larger individuals remain hidden in the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the swamp. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs in a single clutch, and remarkably, she does not simply abandon them the way most snakes do. She coils her body tightly around the eggs and begins a process called thermogenesis, contracting her muscles in rapid, continuous pulses to physically generate heat and keep her offspring warm until they hatch, a level of maternal investment almost unheard of among reptiles. Unlike the alligator, the python carries no venom at all, and it does not need it. Instead, it hunts using a heat-sensing system built directly into its face, a row of small pits along its upper and lower jaw that can detect the faintest trace of body warmth from a warm-blooded animal moving nearby, even in complete darkness. Once prey is located, the python strikes and wraps its enormous body around the victim in tight coils, tightening its grip every single time the animal exhales, until the heart can no longer pump blood and the lungs can no longer expand. Death by constriction is not instant, but it is nearly always certain, and the python has no natural predator in this environment to keep its population in check. For years, wildlife biologists assumed that these two apex predators would simply avoid one another, each sticking to its own hunting grounds and its own prey. That assumption turned out to be catastrophically wrong. In 2005, researchers in Everglades National Park photographed one of the most extraordinary scenes ever recorded in the wild: a 13-foot Burmese python that had attempted to swallow a 6-foot alligator whole. The photographs, later published in scientific journals, showed the python's body ruptured from the strain. And while the exact cause of death for both animals was debated among scientists, the image became one of the clearest pieces of evidence that this rivalry was real, physical, and often fatal for both sides. Since then, researchers have documented dozens of additional direct confrontations between adult alligators and adult pythons across the park, with outcomes going both ways depending on size, timing, and which animal manages to strike first. What makes this rivalry so unusual and so dangerous for the entire ecosystem is that both predators hunt using almost identical strategies of stillness and patience. This means that as their populations increasingly overlap in the same waterways, they are no longer simply competing for the same prey. They are now forced to treat one another as potential targets, and sometimes as potential meals. Wildlife cameras placed throughout the swamp have captured tense standoffs between alligators and pythons that can last for hours, each animal waiting for the other to make the first move, fully aware that a single mistake could be fatal. To understand exactly how far this invasion has spread, researchers developed a method now known as the Judas snake technique. Male pythons are captured, fitted with GPS tracking devices, and released back into the wild during the breeding season, when instinct drives them to search for females. Because a single male can lead scientists directly to a reproducing female, and sometimes to an entire nest, this method has allowed researchers to locate and remove far more snakes than traditional searching ever could. One tracked male in Collier County led researchers to a nesting female measuring over 17 feet long, carrying nearly 100 eggs, a single discovery that likely prevented thousands of future pythons from entering the ecosystem. The state of Florida has also turned python removal into a public event. Every year, the Florida Python Challenge invites hunters from across the country to compete for cash prizes based on the number and size of pythons they capture over a 10-day period. In recent years, the competition has drawn over 1,000 participants, and the longest snake captured during the event has measured close to 16 feet. While the competition captures only a small fraction of the total population, wildlife officials say its greatest value may be public awareness, turning an obscure ecological crisis into a story that ordinary people across the country now follow every year. The consequences of this invasion reach far beyond the two predators themselves. Since the python population began expanding rapidly, surveys conducted throughout the Everglades have recorded catastrophic declines in native mammal populations. Raccoon and opossum sightings have dropped by more than 90% in areas with the highest python density. Bobcat populations have fallen by nearly 90% as well, and marsh rabbits have almost completely disappeared from large sections of the park where they were once common. The collapse of these smaller mammal populations has begun to threaten the food supply of other native predators as well, including the endangered Florida panther, which depends on many of the same prey species that pythons have been steadily eliminating. Wading bird colonies, once one of the defining features of the Everglades, have also seen their nests raided by pythons capable of climbing trees and shrubs in search of eggs and chicks. This is precisely why scientists now believe the alligator may be one of the only forces in the entire ecosystem capable of slowing the python's advance. Every time an alligator successfully kills and consumes a python, it is removing a predator that has no other natural enemy in this environment. Some researchers have even begun to view this brutal rivalry not simply as a curiosity of nature, but as a potential turning point that could determine whether the Everglades' remaining native wildlife has any chance of recovering. In a strange twist, the very same apex predator that dominated this ecosystem for millions of years may now be its last meaningful defense against total ecological collapse. There is growing concern that this crisis will not remain contained to Florida. Climate modeling conducted by the United States Geological Survey suggests that Burmese pythons could eventually survive as far north as southern Georgia and along parts of the Gulf Coast as winters continue to warm, expanding the range of this invasion well beyond the borders of the Everglades. Today, Wildlife agencies in Florida spend millions of dollars every single year on removal programs, employing professional hunters equipped with radio tracking technology and even training scent detection dogs to locate the snakes hidden deep within the wetlands. Despite these efforts, for every python captured and removed, an unknown number remain hidden in the swamp, breeding, growing, and continuing to spread further into new territory each year. The American alligator has survived the extinction of the dinosaurs, multiple ice ages, and millions of years of a constantly changing planet. But its greatest test in modern times may not come from climate change or habitat loss, the threats scientists have worried about for decades. It may come instead from an invader that human beings placed directly in its path on a single stormy night in 1992. An invader that is now competing with it for the very same territory it has ruled since before humans ever existed. In the end, the true battle unfolding beneath the surface of the Everglades was never really a natural rivalry between two predators fighting for survival. It is, and has always been, a battle that we started, and one whose outcome we may not be able to control.